everyone. Welcome back to Underreported Stories, where I cover the news that CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News fail to report on or don't report on enough. And today I am joined by the Daily Wire's beast reporter, Mary Margaret Olohan. Welcome, sister. Happy to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
Of course. Well, welcome back, because you have come on before, but this is so nice to get to do it in person, like actually be in a studio and sit there and chat to somebody. Cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool. So why don't you kind of tell the audience what it's been like for you starting off going into White House reporting for the Trump administration? I asked Shelby, who's like one of your great friends, was here this week on the show on Tuesday. And I think the best feedback I was getting was people are just fascinated to know like what it is like day to day. And you've kind of got into that with your vlogs on TikTok, and it's cute and fun, like a cool way to see what you do. But what has it been like, and what's your least favorite part of it, favorite part, all of that stuff?
Well, first of all, I think it's not as glamorous as some people might think. I mean, it is very cool. I'm close to Trump all the time. I'm close to Caroline Leavitt all the time. I see all these people at the White House every single day. But a major part of our job is the briefing room. So I'll go in there and, you know, I get there 2 hours early for the briefings because I don't have a seat. And Shelby will get there early as well. A lot of our new media cohort gets there super early. Today, for example, the briefing was at 8:30 a.m. So I had to get there around, I mean, I should have got there earlier, but I ended up getting there close to 8 and the room was basically full. Crazy. So I'm standing all the way in the back, like trying to see them, kind of make sure Caroline can see me. And then there's a lot of kind of bickering in there because everybody wants their spot. Mm-hmm. So you get there early. And for me, I will get there, and I'm the oldest in a family of 11 kids, oldest girl. I am used to being bossy and a leader. So if someone comes and stands in front of me, I'll be like, oh, sorry, I've been here. No. You got to leave. And you would be surprised that some people don't agree with that. They might say like, actually, no, I'm going to stand here. I just got here. And there's not a ton of reasoning behind it. So then there's a little bit of weirdness and back and forth.
Crazy.
Just very petty kind of high school nonsense. But in general, it's been really cool to be in there, to get called on, to have legitimate questions to ask Caroline, to ask today Stephen Miller, Scott Besson on Tuesday, Tom Homan on Monday, because this week has been nuts.
There's a picture of you and Tom Homan that is maybe one of my favorites on the internet. You're just standing there and he's like cheesing and he's like pointing at you like a thumbs up.
That was literally the cutest moment. I wasn't expecting to see him. In fact, I was trying to set up an interview with him, but he was too busy to do it. So I was talking to Dr. Gorka in the hall right before I interviewed him, and Tom Homan walks by, and I was like, oh my gosh, hello, Tom, how are you doing? And Dr. Gorka whips out his phone, and Tom leans in and kind of, and then we take the picture.
It's just, Tom Homan is such an interesting person to be around because his media availability is just like kind of insane. Like he's always doing something, yet he's always making time for not like new media and whatnot. I think it's really interesting to watch that landscape change. And you're kind of on the fronts of this like weird, Daily Wire is a weird situation, right? Yeah. Like it's kind of traditional media in the sense that you're writing things a lot. And some of it's like very new media going into like TikTok and all of that. And so I'm just curious, like, has DC and like all of the media entities around here, do you see that evolution happening in real time? Like, are we really embracing the new media as much as they say they are?
Okay, first of all, there's a lot going on where you see places like CNN trying to incorporate a lot of the different things that new media or influencers might do. For example, Caitlin Collins in the briefing room does a lot of like vertical videos that I think they post on different platforms. And you see Jackie Heinrich with Fox News doing that too. There's definitely an attempt to sort of cross that boundary between traditional media and other media platforms. And I think they do well with that. You know, it's interesting to people. But in general, with the new media, there is a little bit of headbutting between, I would say, legacy or traditional media. I wouldn't say mainstream because they're not mainstream anymore. But, you know, we, the new media, are kind of crossing boundaries. Like you said, we're on TikTok, we're on different platforms, we're on, you know, we're writing stories, we're asking questions, we're doing a lot of different things. And we're in the briefing room. We might be in the Oval Office. I was on a plane with Pete Hegseth to Panama. You know, we might be going on some of these foreign trips with the president in the future. And I think some of these legacy media outlets are like, hold up, this is our sacred space. You are not worthy to be here, you conservative reporter woman who thinks traditional families are good. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic. And, you know, everyone's been largely nice. There's been some rude legacy reporters with me, at least to my face. Nothing too bad. But you hear little things here and there. And I know that some of my friends have been treated badly in the briefing room for bad reasons, you know, just by legacy outlets. So it's definitely uncharted territory. I will say that. And we're definitely having to prove ourselves.
It's sad, and it's almost pathetic a little bit. It's like somebody, the new or the older guard media, to me, they're like a fifth year senior where like they just can't seem to graduate and move to the next round, and you're graduating and they're like, wait, but I should be graduating. I've been here longer. Like, they're just losers. Do you know what I mean? Like, they just can't seem to figure it out that, like, in this reference, graduation is like garnering an attractive audience that's worthy of, like, sorry, I know, like, it sounds mean to say, but like the key demographic is 25 to 54-year-olds. If you're not hitting that, just because you have numbers is not really changing the hearts and minds of the country or the culture.
Right. And I think if you look at a lot of the issues that Donald Trump won this election on, it was immigration, the economy, crazy woke stuff like men and women's sports or DEI or sex education in schools, transing the kids. All of these things were just the left pushing too far. And yet all these legacy outlets were on the wrong side of that. It wasn't even like they were saying, oh, look at all these things going on. What's right? What's wrong? They were definitively on the far left side of that stuff. In their stories, they were saying gender affirming care is medically necessary for trans youth, like as if they were the arbiters of what's good for children. So, you know, now we're in this weird space where all of that is obviously wrong, and we've been very open about that. The American people have rejected it. And this administration, you have Stephen Miller saying this morning at the White House press briefing that men and women's prisons is prison rape. He said that men and women's prisons is prison rape. And he said that teachers trying to transition kids in schools is child sex or child abuse. So he's just being very straightforward. And all these reporters are sitting there like, whoa, not prepared for any of this. So it's just uncharted territory across the board.
It's nice that people don't want to mince words. I will say that. But you bring up a good topic, and that is the transgender youth, which we have to get into. So we're going to be talking about the DNC influencers the DNC going up in flames. I have DNC influencers because, guys, last night I had a 45-minute phone call with Harry Sisson. You better tune into my vlog on Monday because what happened? I can't wait to tell you. But anyway, in terms of today's show, we're going to talk about the DNC going up in flames over these race allegations. I also want to get into Robert De Niro's child declaring a new gender and Starbucks employees melting down because, oh my God, they have to wear black shirts. So without further ado, let's get into the 5 underreported stories that you need to know. Let's start off with the Democratic National Committee, or the DNC, is considering challenging the validity of the internal elections. So not like the election of 2024, but their internal DNC elections that resulted in David Hogg, who you guys might know him as the Parkland shooting anti-gun activist who's kind of gone crazy on social media. He was elected as the vice chair. And incoming this past week, a woman named Collin, she's a Native American activist and Democratic operative, filed a complaint after her loss saying that the DNC actually violated its own charter and discriminated against 3 women of color. I'm just going to give you some key context for this story, okay? So this election took place in February. Last month, David Hogg announced plans to put $20 million towards funding younger, more radical candidates to go against these ineffective Democrats, is what they're calling them. So he wants to radicalize the party by getting rid of moderate Dems and putting in even more psycho Dems. Good, that's his job. My question for you is, first off, do you think that is the timing of that? Come on, like all of a sudden he decides that he's going to go up against the DNC through internal operations at the DNC, and then 4 months later, somebody's like, actually, I want to challenge the election. Do you buy it?
No, I don't. And I think you're absolutely right in your correlation there. Lo and behold, there are all these allegations. I'm so shocked. We've seen this over and over and over, right?
Yeah.
Every time there's a high profile man in some situation like that, the easiest way to get rid of him is to accuse him of certain allegations.
True.
We've seen that over and over. But also, I think it's fun. It's just an interesting, the left always eats their own when it comes to this type of thing. You are talking over and over about the importance of DEI, of treating everyone in a certain way. And then when it comes to allegations or things like that, you use those very things to accuse your friends and your allies of being on the wrong side of the table.
Yeah, I want to take this into a little bit of getting your take on the inner party fighting that's happening right now among Democrats, because it's really interesting. And I'm been having conversations a lot with people who really don't agree with me, that I think that this like socialist wing of the left is what is far more scary to me than, and I mean in terms of winning elections. Like I think they have more palatability among young people than your moderate liberal does. And I think this was a comparison I knew I wanted to make with you, as I saw this poll that young people are increasingly going to Catholic churches, which I know you're a Catholic, so it's becoming a thing because the churches that I go to, like the non-denominational ones, they're just almost so relaxed, and there's so few religious aspects as opposed to like the push for spirituality that people don't like it as much. And so if that's where people are going spiritually, I wonder if that's where they're going politically as well.
That's a really interesting correlation. Yeah, first of all, I think that we've seen this for over a decade now in the Catholic Church, where young Catholics are really drawn to like serious faith, not wishy-washy faith, not do whatever you want. It's like, give me rules. I want to live by a very serious, devout lifestyle if that's what we're supposed to do. And as a Catholic, I think that's really cool. And I think that's a really good thing. You know, you want to live by a set of strong moral principles. And there's definitely a resurgence culturally of people wanting to be affiliated with something. But more than that, it's kind of a search for truth, I would say. This desire at the end of the day for every person to like find the truth and understand what they're supposed to be and who they are and where they're going. And, you know, not even just religiously, we see that on a cultural level when it comes to issues like transgenderism, like kids being like, who am I? Why am I here? What am I supposed to be? How can I be the best version of myself? There's a lot of confusion, which I would argue comes from social media too, and all these crazy stereotypes of men and women and masculinity and femininity. But to get back to the Democratic Party, I would say that I agree with you. I think the socialist side of the Democratic Party is far more insidious to me than the moderates, because we're in an age where a lot of the issues that we talk about, you can't really be moderate on. Let's say we're talking about child sex changes. There isn't really a moderate position there, unless you're going to say, oh, I think they should wait till they're 18. And even that is not really moderate anymore. So, and then other things like the border. We talk about, you know, Laken Riley, who was brutally killed, or Rachel Morin, who was also brutally killed by an illegal immigrant. There isn't really a space for moderation the way that these Democrat moderates, or so-called, have framed it for a while. It's very much the left or the right. And so when you're in that situation, I think people are definitely drawn to the extremes of the parties, and socialism is, I would say, an extreme of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, it's very interesting to watch them. When you describe that, I don't see it as an extreme. I see it as common sense or stupid. Like there's just really no in between. And I don't think that's like a Republican way to frame it. Like either the left or the right is either hitting it in terms of common sense or they're not. We're not in this world of like, oh, you know, we can all just like have different solutions to it. It's like you're either on the side of reality or you're not.
Right. And there used to be more nuance. You know, there was so much arguing about this foreign policy or that foreign policy, and it was very niche and kind of academic. And now it's just like
encampments at a school.
Now it's like, oh my gosh, everything has escalated to such a serious level. But it brought us to where we are today. And you hear that a lot of that rhetoric, that even what you were just saying, when the president talks about where we are, he says, this is what the American people wanted. This is common sense. This isn't crazy. And he said that on the campaign trail a lot. This is crazy, which is pretty good messaging, honestly. And it served him well.
It is. I think most people were just, I don't remember if I was having this conversation on the show or not. So sorry guys if I repeat myself, but just kind of like reiterating that like, culture and politics are one. And sometimes we get told, and kind of just because it's been in culture for so long, it seems normal, even if it's not normal. So we keep getting told, you know, like, yeah, like somebody with purple hair and nose rings and that's like, you know, self-harming and trying to mutilate their body. Like, just let them do them. Like, you know, and I'm like, but is that really normal? Like, is that really common sense? And like, I don't know. I feel like we've been so programmed and like, I don't like to use the word flippantly, but almost indoctrinated to be like, No, everybody do them.
Right.
Everybody do them.
Right. There was this aura of do what makes you happy for so long. But when in the history of human civilization has doing what makes you happy been the best thing for you to do?
Oh,
that's never been the best thing for you to do.
No.
And this era of do what makes you happy and this forced empathy, which I saw this a lot. I went to Catholic University here in DC. So a lot of like moderate Dems kind of who were in some ways pro-life, but it was an interesting student base. But there was a lot of like, love everyone should be loved and affirmed no matter what. Not on the gender side of things, but just kind of that attitude. Yeah. And it always bothered me because I was like, yes, every person has dignity and they deserve our love and respect, but that doesn't mean you just say yes, do whatever you want, because that's not how society functions.
Yeah, it's super interesting to watch the cultural aspect of that break down on TikTok, specifically with young women. They'll talk about friendships, and I've been watching the evolution of young people figure out that friendships that are good are friendships in which I could say to you, like, hey, your hair's out of place, or like, no, you shouldn't date him, like, or you don't look good today, like maybe you should go and have a shower. Crazy. Like that is kind to be a little mean to your friends so that it benefits them. And
that's fascinating.
It's really fascinating. These girls are figuring it out really young, and it's a prom season, obviously, right now. I'm sure we have parents in the audience that are like, oh yeah, it's prom season. And seeing women stick up for other women in terms of like, oh, don't wear that dress. Your friends are telling you to wear that dress because you look bad in it. Like, it's so interesting to watch the culture shift of these kids realizing that common sense is better than kindness. But that actually circles our next story quite well, which is that Robert De Niro's child has come out as a transgender woman. In an interview with Them magazine, Aaron De Niro used to be spelled Aaron, like Aaron, Aaron. Now it's Aaron, like the air, A-I-R. Who the hell? Big deal. But Pink News put together a video compilation explaining the interview. So we're going to pull that up, watch that video, and then we'll react on the other side.
Robert De Niro's daughter has come out as trans. In an exclusive interview with Them magazine, Erin De Niro opened up about navigating her transition journey and her identity. She said, trans women being honest and open, especially in public spaces, helped her realize, maybe it's not too late for me. A few media publications commented on Erin's transformation after she was snapped by paparazzi last month, wearing heels and long pink locks, calling her look rebellious and barely recognizable. Commenting on this, the 29-year-old tells them, not only did they get information wrong about me, they just sort of reminded me that people really don't know anything about me. She shared how her childhood experiences affected and shaped her into the woman she is today. She says that she was ridiculed and excluded by her peers for being feminine, bigger-bodied, and different in ways she could not yet describe. As the child of Robert De Niro and Tukey Smith, Erin also shared how growing up biracial further complicated her search for belonging, although her parents were supportive of her queerness. Erin adds that she came out as a gay man in high school, but faced ridicule for not fitting the mainstream beauty standard: white, thin, muscular, and masculine. Her influences include black women such as Laverne Cox, Marsha P. Johnson, Jules LeBron, Michaela J. Rodriguez, Naomi Campbell, and Raven Simone. The aspiring model and actor has established a signature look: pink locks and pink dresses or tops. I think a big part of my transition is also the influence black women have had on me, she added in her interview with Them. Erin shares that she has predominantly been kept out of the limelight, but is keen to share her story and be seen, particularly in the wake of Trump's executive orders affecting the trans community. She wants queer people of color and bigger-bodied people to have an Alex Consani and a Hunter Schafer.
Okay, this is your bread and butter issue, so I'm gonna let you rip, but I did notice one thing that wasn't in that Pink interview, which is that Erin attributed getting dreadlocks to being transgender, saying that they saw Halle Berry in the live-action Little Mermaid, decided to get dreads like Halle Bailey, not Berry, Halle Bailey, and that was the first outward expression of gender identity. Now, I've seen men with dreads before. I don't know. Is there some sort of dreads to trans pipeline that I'm missing here?
There's so many pipelines to trans, and like you're saying, I literally wrote the book on this. So the keyword that jumped out at me immediately from that very confusing little Pink segment where they're using all the wrong pronouns, which is just from a logistical standpoint, just use the real pronouns so we all know what the actual gender of this person was before they decided they were something else. This is a man we're talking about, of course, that a young guy that thinks that he's a girl.
Like our age.
Yeah.
He's like our age, right?
Yeah, 27.
He's 29.
Yes.
29. I could have not.
The Good Schmidt reference in there. I get you. But no, the key word that jumped out at me here was they said he's been kept out of the limelight and now he wants to be in it. That is why so many young people seek transition, is because they want attention, and they're in this world where attention is the only currency that seems to matter. That's why everyone wants to be a TikTok star. Everyone wants to be the girl with all the likes on Instagram. Some of these girls I talked to that tried to transition and then went back to their obvious biological sex, they told me that they were on Instagram, for example, before they were experimenting with any of this. And they were thinking, why don't I look like this beautiful woman who's on this exotic vacation? She gets all these likes. Like, I don't look anything like her. And then they were seeing like really explicit sexual content and thinking, that looks too scary. I don't want anything to do with that. And that scared them into thinking, maybe I'm a man. So that kind of culture messaging is really messing with young people's heads. And then that's a no-brainer when you're the child of a celebrity and you feel that you're not getting enough attention. Easy way to get attention is to tell everyone I'm actually a different gender and I'm the prime spokesperson for why we all should hate the president.
Yeah. And it was very interesting to watch who Aaron picked as an idol, like somebody to look up to.
Yes.
Happened to be people that outside of being trans have really no identity or much talent. Like, what is Hunter Schafer? What, I mean, man, right? Biological man.
I am not even sure.
Looks like, believes they're a woman. I can't even keep this all together. Sorry, I'm looking up. Okay, actor. So like similar to Elliot Page or Ellen, whatever. I don't even, at a certain point, they become so ubiquitous that I'm like, I actually don't even know what it is. I don't know what you are. I don't know what you do. I just know that the reason you are popular is not because you were crazy talented. Right. You're popular now because you're a trans influencer. Right. You're Dylan Mulvaney.
And you know what's so sad about that is I think that's sort of emblematic of where a lot of these people are coming from. Like I was saying earlier, they're struggling for a sense of like, who are we? Like, why are we here? Like, no one understands like family roots anymore, or, you know, no one has like is grounded in faith or understands like why like they're on this earth. There's no religion anymore. You don't like, you know, as a Catholic, I think, okay, I'm here because God put me here and I'm supposed to do this and this and this before I hopefully go to heaven someday. And whatever faith you are, you're supposed to know, like, this is what your faith teaches you and this is why you're here. And even from a secular standpoint, like, you should have an understanding of your family and your trajectory and, you know, what you want out of life, and no one knows anymore. Well, I think it's really sad.
A really key word right there is understanding, not answers, right?
Right.
And this is really delving into spirituality here for a second, but like, I feel like so many people look to religion for answers, and religion has some answers, don't get me wrong, but ultimately is a process of trust, right? And it's having an understanding of where you're going, of where you're guiding. God is ordering our steps individually. He's not giving you like, you don't come to Christianity and turn on the floodlights of this studio and magically see your future, you know? And I think that's why that's what kids want nowadays, because they're just, I think that's just inherent in everybody. We just want answers.
Yeah.
And so I think people try to find answers in changing gender.
Yeah. And we're flooded with information everywhere, but we don't have answers. And that combination is just really hard for, everyone.
I mean, yeah, we experience too. Yeah. I'm not saying you have to, like, it's not a pipeline, but I do think it is something that makes perhaps the floor a little more slippery to go fall into it.
Absolutely.
It's really difficult. I do want to talk about another story that is so up your alley. I was picking these stories like just how I would regularly pick stories just from like kind of myself and the audience. And they all worked out so well for you that I was like, oh, this is perfect.
This is so funny.
Okay, so the abortion pill is reportedly 22 times more dangerous than the FDA initially claimed, with 1 in 10 women, this is so sad, suffering serious complications around these drugs. So we're going to do a little bit of math, not girl math, actual math, which this took me longer than it should have. So if 11.2% of women experienced serious adverse side effects in 2023, that would mean 17,310 women suffered serious side effects that year. However, the FDA cited clinical studies saying that only 0.5% of women suffered serious reactions to this drug. That is, like I said, 22 times less than what the reported numbers actually were. So you know this issue probably better than any other reporter I've met. You and Alexander DeSantis, like, this is your thing. Let's start with the blatant lies here. I want to talk about the FDA, and this is a clear cover-up. I can't think of anything other than this is a clear cover-up.
Yeah, this is a hard conversation to have because obviously so many Americans are conflicted on abortion drugs specifically. But I think that we just need to be really real with each other and with like everybody else when we talk about this. There's nothing like aggressive or wrong with being very factual about whether abortion drugs can harm women or not. And the fact of the matter is that they do. I've spoken with a whole bunch of women who were thinking they were dying, bleeding out on the floor of their own homes because they had just been kind of like negligently given abortion drugs without any information or when they were too far along. And there's just been a very severe lack of transparency when it comes to these because it's considered too divisive or too controversial. Even Republicans are scared to talk about this because it's just become a very politically toxic thing. I think we need to talk about it because this is women's health. It's very important. So back during COVID, the FDA removed all these what they call REMS on abortion drugs.
What's
because
a REM?
it's like a risk mitigation. I can't remember what it exactly.
So it's like some sort of acronym.
Basically, it means that they are the guardrails protecting people from this type of thing, and they were removed, basically saying you don't have to get this from a doctor approved by a doctor in person. Like you can just get it over through telemedicine or online. And it was supposed to ease the way for women to have quote unquote access to abortion. That's what they say to make it sound smoother during COVID. But I remember seeing this during COVID and thinking, wait, we're all home. We don't have access to doctors very easily. Why would you do this when it's not safe? Because we know so many women are adversely impacted when they take abortion drugs at home. It's not like you're just like popping a pill. You're having your baby and your baby is dying in you at home. So that's very dangerous and really sad and really traumatic. And a lot of women don't realize what they're doing. Even the ones who do might get in that situation and be absolutely horrified and then be in danger. So I think the media's awful misinformation on abortion drugs and the FDA has contributed to a lack of understanding and definitely a traumatized mindset for the American women when we talk about this, because everyone's like, oh my gosh, we're losing access to abortion. It's like, no, we're talking about how to protect women and children and also to help people understand that they have more options than abortion. So I get really mad about this conversation because I think we've been so manipulated and pro-lifers are often portrayed as the evil ones when we're often talking about like this nice like mother of 4 that's donating her spare time to spend time helping you like come up with resources and a job and diapers and help you understand that you don't have to end your baby's life in order to succeed. Yeah. So Tim Scott's mom, actually, she's a really good example of this. Yeah. A senator from South Carolina. His mom didn't abort him. She was a single mom. Mm-hmm. She raised him to be an amazing senator. And he was in the Senate talking to a Biden official a couple years ago, and she tried to tell him that women needed abortion to succeed. And he was like, actually, you're wrong. My mom didn't, and I'm here, and I'm a black senator, so you're wrong.
Yeah, no, he is such a powerful visual for everything that the pro-life movement is working towards. I think you touched on something though with the media and their insidious relationship that they have with Planned Parenthood. I don't know if you read Politico ever. I try not to ever anymore, but I opened it up and it literally said, today's Politico newsletter is brought to you by Planned Parenthood. And Planned Parenthood has, they're doing their numbers over there. Right. So they have a very obvious stated goal. But to me, the media and Planned Parenthood being in bed together makes so much sense because I always say, I don't actually care what other people's opinions come from after I report the news, right? Yeah. You're a reporter at heart. It's like, I'm just here to get you the facts out. And after you understand the facts, I think it's really hard to not have my opinion. Yes. But you can still have your own opinion. And that's where, for whatever reason, we have all figured, I think the left and the right, that in medicine, we are doing a poor job of explaining to people the risks and the health benefits of vaccines, certain drugs, pills, antidepressants, birth control, etc.
I was like waiting for you to go there. I was like, yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. I don't understand why this is the one. I mean, I do understand because it's so bought and paid for, but like this is the one issue where you bring it up and you say, hey, like the abortion pill, let's just talk facts about it. It's probably not the best thing probably not the best thing for you.
Yeah.
And it just wrecks people's minds. But I'm like, but if I say the same thing about a vaccine, you're like, oh yeah, I see that. There are risks involved and everything. Like, why does this one break your brain?
No, this one really bothers me because, I have a lot of girlfriends who are having babies now or they're getting pregnant. And
oh yeah, we do have a friend that just gave birth this week.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, I'll tell you after.
Okay.
I'm not going to take the announcement away, but we do.
Oh my gosh. Okay, teaser. But I have so many friends who are, getting pregnant or having babies. And I also have friends who are having miscarriages. And a miscarriage is a really traumatic, sad thing that, we don't talk about enough. Our culture definitely downplays it. But all of these media outlets are trying to say that getting abortion drugs and ending your baby's life or getting an abortion is the same thing as having a miscarriage. And I find that really offensive, especially to my friends who have been through such sad circumstances saying goodbye to their baby. They didn't want that baby to die. They did not cause that baby to die. And so the media, especially right before the election this year, I'm sure you remember there were like 5 major stories about women who were penalized by pro-life laws.
We covered that one in South Carolina. The woman who literally gave birth and let her baby drown
in the toilet.
Yes, and then they were like, it wasn't her fault. I'm like, she let
literally.
I'm sorry, I can't laugh, but like
it's so absurd. I read that police report and my jaw dropped. She literally covered her baby with toilet paper in the toilet and left the baby for like 20 minutes before the police arrived. And then she was like, oh my gosh, like they're being unjustly prosecuting me. Like it makes me so upset.
And she got I don't even know how to say it. She got the abortion pill, but she conveniently didn't take it, but also it wasn't found.
Yeah.
And then she had all the side effects of the abortion.
But these media outlets breathlessly tell these stories. They take their word for it. They are the victims and, they've been unjustly prosecuted. There were, I want to say 5 of those stories. ProPublica did a bunch. I think Washington Post did one. I want to say Politico did one. And they were designed to stir up fear among women about Donald Trump. And you know what? Like, you're allowed to not like Donald Trump. Like, by all means, if you don't like him, don't like him.
Yeah.
But don't you dare lie to women about their bodies and about their health and about babies, the most vulnerable people among us. That incensed me. And so I think, any of those outlets that went that direction, shame on them. Do not trust them ever again. That was intended to manipulate you. And you should be pissed about that.
I know. I always say that. I'm like, they think we're so stupid. They think because we have boobs that we're dumb. I think it's a real thing. But one other last question I had for you on the story before we move on. I think as a really pro-life person yourself, RFK is such an interesting pick.
Yeah.
For the pro-life community. And I know it kind of incensed some people. I don't know how you felt about it. You feel free to get into that. Are you hopeful that he will be smart enough to make lasting change against abortion pills like this? Because like I said, he has no problem doing that about vaccines, birth control, et cetera, et cetera. Why do you think he'll make an exception for abortion drugs?
So RFK is really interesting. I've talked to a lot of people about him because obviously, I'm covering White House issues, but I obviously really care very strongly about culture war issues. I spent the last 6 years writing about them. And there's been a bunch of different appointments close to him that people were looking twice at. I know Marty McCary, Josh Hawley was really worried about whether he would take action against abortion drugs. I think Marty was FDA, I think.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
And then there was there were a couple different hiccups in that nomination process where people were really concerned about
commissioner of the FDA.
FDA commissioner. There were people who were concerned how the HHS and FDA were going to work together to combat the dangers of abortion drugs. Now, I think this new research is really interesting because it shows a willingness from all parties involved to take a serious look at what's going on. And that's the most important thing. Honestly, I don't really care how personally pro-life any of those people are, as long as they're willing to look at the facts and look at the realities and look at science and say, this is or isn't hurting women, or this is or isn't hurting your unborn baby, because that's something we've not been honest about for a long time. 100%. I think women, if they're going to choose abortion, they should know how much it's hurting their baby, how far along their baby is, what the baby can feel, what the baby can hear and smell.
Did I ever tell you this story? I might have told you offline before, but in 7th grade, I grew up in like suburban Chicago, so really left wing. Like Lauren Underwood is our representative, so she's like pretty left leaning if you've ever heard of her. So it's not a red area at all. And it was in public middle school at like a not great middle school, they had just like transitioned all of us into like switch. Like I went to one middle school that was kind of nice in 6th grade. 7th grade, they transitioned us to kind of like the shitty middle school, to be honest. And I was like, this sucks. But we had health class, and I had no understanding of the ramifications this would play in my life over the years. But this woman came and spoke to us. Like our health teacher had a friend of hers. No, this is crazy. Come speak to us and tell us about abortions. And the woman said, I had so many abortions when I was young that I could never get pregnant again, and it ruined my life. Don't ever have an abortion.
Oh my gosh.
Like went on this whole tirade, and it changed my life. And so I just was always wired. Obviously at the time I just trusted my instructors who were in front of me, that I'm like, oh, if you have an abortion, you can't get pregnant again, or it's really difficult to get pregnant again. And then the abortion lobby really tries to push against that. But this is like women's experiences.
Right.
That we're not covering enough.
It's crazy. It's
a crazy story.
I've never heard that before, by the way. I've only heard the opposite, which is like Planned Parenthood sending sex educators into schools in like Texas. And they're like all going in with the mindset that women can't control themselves and need to have as much sex as possible. So you just have to help them not get STDs.
Yeah.
Like that was their
When were we in middle school though? Like 2012?
No, but they still thought that these like middle schoolers were sexually promiscuous, and unfortunately in some areas they are.
Oh my gosh, my middle school needed that conversation and like 8 more. But anyway, let's get into our next story. I want to take a hard turn away from abortion talk and move into another hot button issue, immigration. Yes. And by the way, guys, today's show is completely ad-free. So if you want to support this show at all, be sure, as always, you can purchase links or purchase merch from Based Apparel or subscribe to my newsletter for free. It's all linked below. So this story, super underreported because it's kind of local, but so emblematic of where we are at in America. So a police officer in California was arrested for sexual assault last week, and it's been uncovered that this officer was not an American citizen, and he had been previously arrested for domestic violence when he was living here several years ago, and yet somehow he still got a work permit. So his name is Felipe Gomez, and he, like I said, he's here with a work visa or a work permit. Mm-hmm. That doesn't actually give me the answer as to whether he's here legally or illegally, but that's just the context we have. Of course, I'm reporting this from ABC 7, so they're not going to tell me. Right. And under a new California law signed by Governor Gavin Newsom, this made Gomez eligible to be able to serve as a police officer.
Wow.
So the chief of police in Belmont, California, this is where this guy was arrested, where he was serving as a police officer. They had received tips from nearby police chiefs warning this police chief not to hire this guy. And the chief just ignored all the red flags, hired this man anyway, a potentially illegal immigrant. We don't know yet, legal, whatever, immigrant who came here and domestically assaulted a woman and then raped a woman a few years later. And we're just like, red flags galore over here, and we're completely ignoring it. First off, I want to talk about there's so many ways, I have so many ways I want to go with this, but let's start off with, what do you think of this new push of asking immigrants to join law enforcement? I'm an immigrant, so like fire away. I have my own opinions.
Okay, well, first of all, in blue cities, there's a serious problem with law enforcement where some of these, I remember in Fairfax County, Virginia, and this is, I grew up near here, so I'm very aware of these different counties. Mm-hmm. Fairfax County is so close to DC that it's very liberal, even though it's in Virginia, and some of those cities are more conservative. And I knew cops that wanted to get out of there so badly because they knew that the prosecutor in their area was purposefully trying to make examples of them because they wanted them to be thought of as like the progressive area and the progressive police force that, they would never unfairly target anyone. So if there was any kind of altercation, let's say you pull over someone who's black, these cops didn't want to do anything. They didn't want anything to do with that person, no matter what the crime was, no matter what the situation was, and they were scared for their families and for their lives. And so I've seen in a bunch of different blue cities where there's a real serious cop shortage because these guys don't want to be there anymore. I knew a guy that moved away with his family so that they could be in a safer area and where he could be a good cop and not have to worry about being prosecuted.
That's what my father-in-law does. He was in, not like a bad area, but he was like kind of closer to Detroit. Yeah. And now after the BLM movement, he's like, I'm going to go to a town like 45 minutes away where the cows outnumber the people.
Good. Yeah. Because
you're right. You're hitting the nail on the head.
You can be a good cop, and we need good cops, and we need to prosecute the bad cops. Yeah. But at the same time, Why would you put yourself in that situation?
Yeah, so then you have, I get where your line of logic is going there. Then you have your illegal immigrants, legal immigrant, whatever, coming in and filling the gap.
And then there's a shortage of there's too many jobs that are open. The area isn't safe. You need more cops, and then you bring in people like that.
I just feel like it's really, to me, I don't like this law at all. And that comes into a critique of Gavin Newsom. But to me, I'm like, I was here as an illegal immigrant for 13 years. And I understood very much that was my pledge of allegiance to the country, was paying taxes and not being able to vote, you know, having cops around me and never being able to apply to be like, that is just a thought that is okay with me. Like, I don't understand why you wouldn't have to pledge allegiance to your country in some capacity. I understand, like, maybe.
Yeah, that's super weird.
Or like be on the right kind of visas on the track to immigration.
Yeah.
Student name permit citizen. It's like something about it is really off to me.
No, I agree. But I think in general, California is just a disaster when it comes to this type of thing. They have every progressive loophole imaginable. I mean, not to get really gross here, but I remember when I was at the Daily Caller reporting on Scott Wiener. Do you remember him?
Oh, yeah, of
that
course.
State lawmaker.
He's still around, isn't he?
He is. Oh, yeah. But he had literally just enacted some law to make it so that sodomy with a minor was okay. He was like doing all this crazy gross stuff. Yeah. And California was celebrating it as if they were so they love this stuff as they actively ruin their state and make people live in more dangerous situations.
Yeah, and I really want to just hammer this into everybody's minds. This was Gavin Newsom's doing. Like, he didn't hire this guy, but he created a policy environment in which this happened. And it's so funny because the lefties hate Newsom right now because he's such a sellout on all their causes by going on his little fake podcast and rebranding himself as like a conservative blowing smoke up other conservatives' asses. And then he actually comes in and the policies he implements are extremely far left. And so I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on his rebrand?
Okay,
How's it going?
I actually want to ask Caroline Levitt about this. I want to hear what she thinks.
Yeah.
And I really want to hear what Trump thinks because I know he has something spicy. So I'm going to ask him if I get a chance. In my opinion, Gavin Newsom is purposefully positioning as more moderate because he sees that the whole country thinks that the Democrats went too far. His whole state is benefiting from the policies that he enacted, which are all far left. So it makes no sense why he would position himself as a moderate when he created the mess that California is.
Yeah.
But he wants to be thought of a different way. And honestly, I think he can do it. He is really good at this. So I think he can continue to mess with California, to allow kids to be taken from their parents if their parents don't want to transition them. I think he can allow these illegals to be cops and to be in very intimate spaces and hurting citizens.
Yeah.
And then on the national stage, he can be charming and witty and bantering with Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk, and people are like, "Wow, he's not so bad, is he?" I think he can thread that needle. He's got that charisma that people like Bill Clinton had.
Yeah.
Where they're a scoundrel and a scumbag. But then after you talk to them, you're kind of like, oh, wow, what a nice guy.
Yeah.
It's that vibe.
No, for sure. I think he's going to become unpalatable to young people, and young people are clearly like switching things up. Like Donald Trump won in part because of the young vote. And so if the young vote is more kind of crazy socialist, I'm not saying, and I know that's not like new information, but you need someone that is palatable without so much of a record if you're going to go moderate lib. That's why I thought Kamala was like not a good choice. She was a horrible choice, but like I understood how we got there. And that's why I think Gretchen Whitmer to me is like their big pick. That's their one they're going to go with.
She definitely is. I think AOC is still very much in the running.
100%.
But I would not discount Newsom. He's so slippery. He understands politics now too well. And I think he's got a plan up his sleeve. All
right. Well, I trust your judgment on that. All right. Let's get to our fifth and final story. We've got an update from Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the name I literally never, ever want to say again. We have a little screenshot that I want to pull up real quick for you guys. So on August 20th of 2013, Edwin Ramos, who was originally married to Kilmar Abrego Garcia's wife, and had children with her, he filed an emergency custody petition. You can see it on your screen if you're in the viewing audience, for his children because he alleged that the kids are in danger, quote, because he is dating a gang member. So I thought this story went dark because all of a sudden the left was more interested in that other story about the 2-year-old that got fake deported. That's kind of where my mind went. But I'm starting to think that this is a cover up. The more I'm starting to get retrospective about the story, because we don't need to go into like all the details of this, but like Every week we seem to get more and more information, which at first we didn't. And I was very critical on the show. You guys all know out there that I was like, guys, I don't know if he's a gang member yet. I'm not going to say it yet. Yeah. Eventually I got to the point where I felt comfortable saying he had ties to a gang. Yes. Now I know that he wasn't, like, I'm cool with it now, but I wasn't in a rush to get there.
Right.
However, every week we find out more and more information about this. And you know what's so funny is over the weekend, the White House Correspondents Association had their annual gala, and the guy that won the big award, his name is Alex Thompson. He put out this book with Jake Tapper. You probably heard of him before. He was sitting there doing this like, we should be slapping ourselves on the wrist for the way we covered up Joe Biden while you're actively engaging in a cover-up right now. Like, you're just doing it again. Do they not realize it?
Over and over. You know what?
Jump out of this chair.
I actually have a good story to share about that because I was really mad about this. I was in the briefing room a couple weeks ago, and obviously Kilmar Abrego Garcia, he's from Maryland, right?
Yeah.
And that's where
he's from El Salvador, but sure.
Right.
The Maryland man.
And so amidst all of this drama over his deportation, as all the reporters, keep in mind, like, I'm with these people all day long.
Yeah.
Every 5 minutes. Why aren't you bringing him back? Why is he in El Salvador? Like, what do you make of, like, does his family miss him? Like, all this nonsense all day long. Over and over, you would hear the same responses. Like, you know, at a certain point you think, okay, just stop asking. You're going to get the same answers. But no. It just was ongoing. And so there was a surprise briefing called, and Caroline Leavitt said, we have a surprise guest, like, it'll be at whatever time. Everyone got really excited. We thought it was gonna be Trump or something, and we were all waiting in there, and Caroline comes in, and right behind her is this woman with no makeup. She's in a black dress, no jewelry. She looks so sad. Turns out to be the mother of Rachel Morin, who you probably even talked about this.
Yeah.
Rachel Morin was brutally killed by an illegal immigrant in Maryland. And her mother stood in front of all of us, the White House press corps, supposedly some of the most, like, elite journalists in the country who cover,
Outside of you and Shelby can be exceptions, but that's probably about it.
We appreciate it. They think of themselves that way. And she looked in everybody's eyes and said, please tell the truth. Please don't lie. Like, we have a serious violent crime problem in our country. These illegal immigrants are, like, hurting our kids. They're killing our daughters. Like, please tell the truth. And none of these reporters could be bothered to actually write about it. Caitlin Collins, she goes, thank you, after the mother finished speaking. I asked someone to keep an eye on her show that night, because she had a show on CNN that night. Not a peep about it, even though people in the room were crying because everyone was so moved by that speech she gave. And I think that's a really good example, too, of why this is disappearing from the national narrative, is because people like Patty Morin exist. Her daughter was brutally murdered by an illegal immigrant who, and I'm not going to get too graphic here, but Patty said to us and looked in our eyes that there was an imprint of her daughter's blood on the cave where she was raped and killed. Just like so sad and brutal. And these reporters couldn't be bothered to talk about it. No. Don't care about her story, but they do know that it's becoming politically toxic because Americans don't want those types of people loose in our country, so they let it go. They kind of let it fade into the ether.
It's still a cover-up. You know what I mean? I understand that there's not as many updates on it, but, like, the lack of telling the truth and then the lack of realizing that you're engaging in a cover-up while slapping yourself on the wrist for engaging in a cover-up for the last 2 years, it's just so... Do they need, like, lube? Like, do they need help getting their heads out of their ass? I don't love to help, but I don't think that's going to happen. Anyway, before we wrap up today's show, Starbucks has made a very interesting announcement. They announced it on May 12th, so coming up, 11 days. All employees must abide by a new dress code. The scary, scary dress code is that all employees will have to wear some sort of solid black shirt, any black shirt you like, and then you have to wear some sort of khaki black pant or denim under your little green apron. And I think we've all crafted a visual image in our mind of what a typical Starbucks worker looks like. And it is very fair to say they're not thrilled about this. So we have pulled up a video. We are going to react on the other side. I can honestly say, guys, I haven't watched this at all. I waited to do it just with you. So let's do it.
Something that Starbucks loves to do is allow partners to be themselves, or whatever that PR that they want to push. I don't understand how that's in good faith of letting us express ourselves. I don't understand how that's supposed to embody craft and culture and bring us back to that coffee house kind of vibe that Starbucks is asking for, because for some reason you all can't understand how to schedule more people in a zone. You can't understand that people are taking LOA, and that you can't understand that it's not appropriate to tell someone that they are okay, that they should be doing the work of 4 people. That's disrespectful. I'm sorry, I walked into ICU actually on the floor and actually helping instead of going against things that help us. When your partners are saying, I need you, I need help, sorry, we're busy, I'm doing admin, sorry.
This is not a legal action that Starbucks is taking by unilaterally deciding what the dress code is going to be and then creating this so-called feedback session where the dress code's already created.
What is happening?
It's illegal. I literally think we were supposed to let that video keep going, and I was like, I can't listen to this anymore.
I'm so triggered.
This is so stupid. It's illegal to have a dress code.
I'm sorry. Is it not like when you get hired at a job, you expect to have a dress code in some way or form or manner?
Those people just did exactly what I thought they were going to do, which is just like exude stupidity while looking exactly how I expected them to look. They've really done themselves a number. I don't know. I haven't gone into a Starbucks in a while. My goal for 2025 was to not buy any Starbucks.
Good for you.
Year.
I boycott them every like 3 years, and I got really busy this year, and I thought, okay, maybe they slacked off, and I've gotten it a couple times. I don't know if I can do it.
No, it's not even that good anyway. Like if I'm gonna give my money,
way better.
Thank you, thank you. I'm not even like a Northeaster, and I think that is the correct answer. But I'm very interested to see if there are like actual protests that are gonna come out. So like May 12th is like circled on my calendar now. What would that even look like? Just go get a different job if you don't like Starbucks dress code. What the hell?
Right. Also, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't know that, like, working at Starbucks, like, the great way to make money, but I don't know that it's necessarily the place to, like, lay down the law about what you're going to wear.
Oh. I'm curious whether they're going to get rid of the little pins. Because obviously you've been there. Yeah. A lot of people will wear, like, I see a lot of people, they wear, like, a hoodie or a t-shirt and their apron. And then there's, like, pride pins all over their aprons. Because it's never, a normal cause, like a cancer ribbon or something
it's
noble.
always like transing the kids.
Yeah, no, it's always like, I like banned books. There's a bumper sticker in my neighborhood of somebody that says like, I heart banned books. I'm like, what? You like child porn? That's
ew, yeah. Are you serious? What do they think it is? Like Wuthering Heights? No, it's like the child porn books.
So freaking weird. Anyway, I had a blast hanging out with you. I could talk to you for hours, but if people want to follow along your journey, going to frickin' Panama with Pete Hegseth or Michigan with Trump, where can they find you?
You can find me at Mary Margaret Olohan on Twitter, Mary Margaret Olohan on Instagram, dailywire.com, and maybe other places soon. We'll see.
Yeah, just Google her, guys. She's the best. Anyway, if you're a real one and you made it to the end of today's show, will you drop the Little Mermaid emoji as an homage to De Niro's kids' weird comments about liking the Little Mermaid and being trans with the Little Mermaid. Anyway, on Tuesday, we'll have a regular show. And like I said, we've got a debrief about my call with Harry Sisson. So we'll do that then. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Thanks so much for watching. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to subscribe and leave a comment about how beautiful, intelligent, and funny I am. And if you want more content, click right over here for more videos and clips of my show. I'll see you back here next time. Bye.